Well, welcome everybody to tonight's edition of The Great Movies, a discussion of Stella Dallas from 1937, starring Miss Barbara Stanwyck. And before we get to that discussion, my name is Andy Wolverton, and I'm delighted to be joined once again by my co-host and partner in crime, Darnice Jasper. Darnice and I are both librarians in the Anne Arundel County, Maryland Public Library System, which sponsors this program. And our next virtual meeting will be on Friday, February the 4th at 7 p.m. Eastern. And let me plug that into the chat. And there that is. Does everybody get it?
Yes.
Okay, great. So on that date, February the 4th, we are going to discuss another round from 2020. Who says we only do old movies around here? Another round stars Mads Mikkelsen, who you've probably already seen in the TV show Hannibal. You can start signing up for that discussion next Friday, January the 21st. So that link is already in the chat. You know all about that. Also, don't forget we're going to have another film to discuss in February, Black Orpheus from 1959. We're going to do that one on February the 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern. All right, so it looks like we have some new people joining us tonight, which is great. Welcome. And we want to have everybody that's interested to join our email list. So if you're brand new and like to keep track of what we have coming out, you can send me an email at awolverton@aacpl.net. And that way you'll get the news of all of our upcoming programs before anybody else. And we do have a good crowd tonight, but know that we want as many people participating as possible. So if you have a question or a comment, you can just raise your real hand or your virtual hand, or you can use the chat feature, and Darnice will work you into the conversation. We also ask that you please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. Now, I know it seems like the farthest thing away right now, but I'm already thinking about our summer lineup, which includes the return of the Audience Choice movies. And as we've done previously, we'll have 3 Audience Choice movies this summer, nominated and chosen by you, and maybe a couple that Darnice and I might choose as well. So start thinking now about the titles that you want to nominate. I'll be calling for nominations in a few weeks, and remember, it has to be on Kanopy. Now, several of you live outside of Anne Arundel County, Maryland, and your library systems also have Kanopy, but your Kanopy lineup might be different than what we have. Every library system does it a little bit differently, but I'll be glad to check any titles for you to make sure that we have them, and also I'll check to see when they expire. So when we get into that process, I will let you know well in advance of when that's going to happen. Okay, I think that is it for my announcements. Does anybody have any questions about any of that stuff or anything else? All right, fantastic. Well, let's get into it. Okay, how many people watched Stella Dallas tonight for the first time, or watched it this week for the first time in preparation for this event? Wow, a lot of people watched it for the first time. That's great. So a little bit about this version. This version of Stella Dallas is actually a remake of a silent film from 1925, just a dozen years earlier, starring Ronald Colman and Belle Bennett as the title character. Now, although this wasn't Belle Bennett's first film, she'd never really distinguished herself in any of her previous roles. Yet she landed the part after producer Samuel Goldwyn tested more than 75 actresses for the part. Now, 12 years later, planning for a remake, Goldwyn wanted to take the same approach and test several unknown actresses for this version of Stella Dallas. But Goldwyn's director, King Vidor, wanted Barbara Stanwyck for the part. Now, Stanwick had already made 30 movies at this point and was certainly not an unknown, but initially she wasn't sure about the role. In fact, some of Stanwyck's close friends encouraged her not to take the part, especially since the character ages throughout the film, becoming less and less attractive. It was also considered the kiss of death for a leading actress to play the role of a mother, especially this mother. Gloria Swanson, whom we saw in Sunset Boulevard not long ago, turned down the role for this very reason.
Hmm.
Now, Stanwyck decided she was interested, but Goldwyn wanted every actress up for the part to be given a screen test. Well, Stanwyck refused. She was no unknown. She'd made 30 films. If they wanted her, they'd have to ask her. Now, Stanwyck's agent, Zeppo Marx, pleaded with her to do a test. The answer was no. Zeppo went to Stanwyck's good friend, actor Joel McCrea, and asked him to convince Goldwyn to choose Stanwyck without a test. Goldwyn spoke with McCrea and admitted Stanwyck was good, but thought she didn't have any sex appeal. McCrea replied, and I quote, "Sam, Barbara is Stella Dallas. I don't give a shit if she has sex appeal or not. She must have something because she's going with a guy named Robert Taylor, who every girl in town has been after, and she's got him." But it wasn't enough. Goldwyn stood firm, insisting Stanwyck test for the part, and she gave in. King Vidor said, "Stanwyck's test was undeniable. She put everyone else to shame." Stanwyck said of Stella, "She wasn't me, but she was a woman I understood completely. She was good, cheap, but good, and I could play her." And she certainly did play her, earning Stanwyck her first Oscar nomination, losing to Louise Rayner for The Good Earth, a choice I will never understand. Of the loss, Stanwyck said, "My heart's blood was in that film. I should have won." She's right. Yet Stanwyck's career exploded as she delivered one superb performance after another. She retired from films in 1964, but found new life on television, retiring from the small screen in 1986. She passed away in 1990 at the age of 82. In talking about her performance in Stella Dallas, Stanwyck stated that she went to pieces only in one scene. Stanwyck said, "When the time came for me to give up my daughter, Laurel, I couldn't go through with it. Not that day. Neither could she." Stanwyck's mother died when Barbara, born Ruby Stevens, was 4 years old, so she had no mother who fought for or sacrificed for her. She knew no mother's love and was unable to have children of her own. Also, Anne Shirley, who plays Laurel, worked for 16 years to become a star in order to make her mother happy. So there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff going on with both of these fine actresses for this film. So let me kick off the discussion with this question. How did you feel about the character of Stella Dallas?
Well, I have to admit that I was really put off by the character of Stella Dallas. I thought that Barbara Stanwyck, bless her heart, was brilliant, and it helped a lot that it was Barbara Stanwyck who was portraying this woman, because that made it possible for me to have some more empathy for it than I might have otherwise had, because it was hard for me to buy going into the latter part of the movie how much she loved her daughter when she really struck me as a very conniving, vacuous person who was just trying to make it. He had a very low self-esteem. I think that the fact that her daughter was probably her greatest achievement in life did sort of explain where that connection was. But the idea that she would sacrifice so much for her daughter, I had trouble buying that. I'm very curious to hear what everybody else feels about that, because maybe I just missed it, but yeah, that was my basic take on that character.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Bill.
Ethan, then Bob. And I'm sorry, Ethan, John, then Bob.
Within like the first 10 minutes of watching Stella Dallas, I had this exact thought in my head. It was like, I've seen a lot of movies where I don't really enjoy the first 10 minutes, but something clicks right at the end of the first act, and then I just get so much more invested, and I fall in love with it, and it ends up being amazing. Stella Dallas is not going to be one of the ones because I can't understand anything that's going on. I highly doubt this is going to twist for me soon. And by golly, it twisted for me soon. Oh my goodness, I loved this. There's so much to love. I'm still a bit confused on the beginning. That's what the Wikipedia synopsis is for.
Yeah.
But on the character of Stella Dallas, I was so invested in her struggle because I think it's really, I like how she was portrayed as it's not even that she wants more than anything else in the world to be with her daughter. What she wants more than anything else in the world is to not be who she is when we meet her. And the whole movie is just her completely powerless to changing who she is. She's spending the entire runtime trying to be something that she's not in so many different ways, and all of them fail, but you can tell just how important this is to her and how she's not going to give up until the very, very end. And I was completely invested in that once that started. I really, really liked this.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that, Ethan. And I was going to ask you, how much of that do you think was actually Stanwyck herself, or was it the way the part was written, or maybe both?
I think the part was written that way. I think obviously the characters' objectives and their goals and obstacles and everything like that is written into the screenplay, but a lot of what made it come to life and really feel urgent, like it was happening right there, was Barbara Stanwyck.
Promoting, yeah.
Yes. Acting, if you will.
Genius.
All right. Thank you, sir. Darnice, who we have next?
We got John, then Bob,
Okay.
then Art.
I'll quickly admit that this is my problem, and but I didn't have as great a problem with the character as I did with Barbara Stanwyck. I just didn't really think she was right for the role. So maybe Goldwyn was right, even though she was nominated for the Academy Award. And I think the problem I have is that for me, it's hard to see her through any other lens. And I've seen her in a number of movies, but to me, Double Indemnity is her premier role. And I just can't get beyond that, I guess, really. And I thought her performance was a little bit over the top. I just had a hard time believing her performance of the character. Again, as I said, I'm ready to admit that that's my problem and not an inherent problem with the film. But it was something I was constantly wrestling with as I watched the movie. I also found, this has nothing to do with Stanwyck. I found the early scenes in the mill to be really interesting, the office there, because I live near a city, Paterson, New Jersey, that at one time was loaded with these kinds of mills. And you can go in and see, the remnants of that in some of the buildings. It's now a national park, at least some of it is. And I thought Vidor, who does have a social conscience, that's something he was at one time famous for, really captured that in a very subtle and convincing way. And I really like that element. And I thought that was, he seemed to understand what working in an environment like that actually entailed. I thought he did a good job with that.
Okay, thank you, John. Actually, you brought up something that I wanted to bring up a little bit later, and we can touch on it as we go, about Stanwyck maybe being over the top in some scenes. But I wondered, I wish there was someone that I could talk to somebody from that original 1937 audience to find out how many people, I thought this could have gone laughable unintentionally very easily. But I wish I could have talked to somebody who was actually at the premiere or saw it as it originally played to find out if that was a problem. But yeah, John, you make some outstanding points, especially about the director King Vidor. Who's next, Darnice?
We got Bob next, then
Okay.
Art, then Sue.
Okay.
I had two reasons for wanting to watch this movie. First, Barbara Stanwyck doesn't have a better fan than I. I think she was, without question, the greatest actress to come out of the 30s, and I don't think anybody was in second place. And still, I thought this movie was almost unwatchable. If it had not had her in it, I don't think I could have taken it for 5 minutes. Forget about 10. But this film had a real carry on. It turned into a gigantic radio soap opera in the late 30s and 40s. And I know that because when I was a kid, about 8 years old, I used to fake being sick to stay home and listen to it. Now, can you imagine an 8-year-old kid who would want to listen to something like this on the radio? I mean, and that was hard for me to do. My father was a doctor. It was tough to con him. But I watched it last night, and I thought I should have stayed in school. That would have been the smarter thing to do, I think.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's great. Thanks, Bob.
Okay, Art.
First of all, I'd like to say that I thought Barbara Stanwyck, it was my first time watching it today, and I thought Barbara Stanwyck's performance was magnificent in the movie. And the thing that I liked about, I didn't like the character at all, except that one redeeming quality, and that was her devotion to her daughter. And it seemed like she was living her life through her daughter. And the fact is that instead of being jealous of her daughter for being what she wished she was, instead, she encouraged her. And when she made that ultimate sacrifice of even allowing her to go stay with her father so she could better her life. I thought, one scene that really hit home to me is when she went to that place all dressed up. They showed her overdressed and with that whatever animal that was around her, and she was being ridiculed. And the daughter, well, it hurt the daughter, but the daughter didn't seem to be ashamed of her. It was like, hey, I'd rather deal with my mother than deal with these shallow people. So overall, I thought it was a fantastic movie.
All right. Thank you, Art.
Thank you, Art. Okay, so running down the list, we've got Sue. Then I think I saw Bill Sikора's hand up. Was that right? No? Okay, never mind. Then Susan, then Wale, then Jim, and Jan. Writing it all
Okay.
down. Got it.
Okay,
Go ahead,
so all right. When I started, I didn't think I was going to like it, and I'm going, oh no. And then I thought, wait a minute, this is kind of good. And I will say, ultimately, I thought she was fabulous, absolutely fabulous. I will also tell you, like someone else said, I think maybe Jan, I had an incredible dream about this. And it went on and on and on, and there were mothers all over the place. And the worst part of it at the end was my mother, and she wouldn't do anything I asked her to do. But she was there for me, which of course she always was. But I know women like this. I went to girls' schools, and I followed these women through their lives. And it's not, Barbara may have been over the top certain scenes, of course, but I think so many people in this country or everywhere are brainwashed by Jane Austen and, oh, this lovely lady down here in the gentry is going to rise up to become a princess. And of course, she will make it. But in fact, it's not true. That very, very few people at a lower level can make it to the higher level because there's just a tremendous amount of difference, which people don't recognize. Language, vocabulary, manners, subtle things that are taught at a certain level that people in that level recognize. And you don't have to be wearing fancy clothes or crazy clothes to be ostracized, because people know you're not part of them, and they make it very subtly clear you're not. So it takes it also brings back, for example, Kate Middleton. She's up at really the level below the aristocracy, so she's okay. But Meghan Markle, is it? She's not, and she doesn't fit, and she knew it. I'm just saying, there are so many of these I'm going to become a princess stories that I was so happy to see one that she's not going to become a princess, because it's true. It's much more realistic, and I'm so tired of everybody thinking that somehow this woman's going to marry this incredible man. I also know women who literally did try to marry rich people and did do it, and they had to totally change who they were. So I find it very realistic, and there were so many good things that Stanwyck did, but the one I loved was where she's sitting down with Helen, explaining to Helen how she wants everything for her child. And I don't think it's a paradox that she can be crazy and be wild and yet give up anything for her child, because I think that really gets to the heart of what a lot of mothers are and will do. So anyway, I found myself thinking about it all the time and all the different ramifications socially. So I loved it. That's what I have to say.
All right. Thanks, Sue.
Thanks so much. Okay, Susan.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of a silly, I mean, back in the 30s, that was like a big deal because women didn't really have the opportunity to make it on their own if they were poor, unless they married well.
Right.
And so it was sort of a fantasy at the time of a working girl's, what she could achieve. Rather than a good job or a career or a university degree, it was marriage. The fellow, Stephen Dallas, though, wasn't really rich. He was socially rich, I guess you might say, but he ended up hooking up with Helen, who had the money. So when you look at it, it's sort of, okay, he didn't do anything any different than Stella did. He married up for the second wife. But one of the things I wanted to bring up too on a different subject was her outfits. I mean, what really bugged me about this movie was when she, at the very beginning of it, when she was kind of flirting with John Bowles, she looked nice. I mean, she had like regular clothes, pretty. She looked pretty. And then as she married this guy, her outfits got more and more grotesque to the point where you couldn't believe that she would wear them, that her character would actually be dumb enough to wear those ridiculous hats. And I also would like to talk a little bit about John Bowles or Stephen Dallas. Barbara Streisand or Stella never was really under the illusion that she was in love with him. I mean, even as supposedly good looking as he was, the minute she was married and had the kid, that was it for her. She didn't really have any interest in him anymore. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Susan. I'm going to jump in because I just want to say something that my interpretation of the relationship is that when he was dating her, she was new and he was lonely and he didn't want her to change anything, but wanted to be herself and be yourself. And then all of a sudden, when he was moving up in the business world, he wanted her to change. And by then it was too late. Like he should have worked with her and said, okay, you want to be, I love that. That would be great. We can help you. And then all of a sudden it was she needed to turn on class. But like Susan said, he had to buy her that stuff. he had to, approve of her to get that, because in those days, that's how women were allowed to get money from their husband. He fed her right into that. So I had problems with Steve, but that's a different story. Okay. Aside. Now, Wale, then Jim, then Jan, then Bill.
Um, when I started them, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Kind of muted. I mean, muffled.
Is it better?
Yes.
When I started the movie, I wasn't sure. Like the class differences weren't that obvious to me. Like if I look at people today, I guess I can easily tell, or back home where I was born, I could tell drastic class differences. But when the movie started, I was like, it never occurred to me that he was supposed to be in a different social strata than she was. So I didn't understand the big deal in going to one corner of a room to say hello to people at a party. But as the movie went on, I got to understand that okay, she's supposed to be lower class. Her accent was going in and out of something. Her accent was changing from time to time, so it was hard to pin that initially. But once I understood that okay, she's supposed to be of a different class from these people, my heart went out to her, because I see that today. I see people ostracized for all sorts of reasons, whether they're the way they talk, their financial status, their skin color, the idea that people can't be together because they're in a different class, I mean, it's just something that I feel bad about. I feel it's a tragedy. I feel if you meet somebody you connect with, you be with that person. That's it. I mean, call it simple. I'm not exactly a romantic or somebody who believes in getting married for romantic reasons. I'm actually as practical as they come. But at the same time, if people are banding together to say, okay, no, you don't belong. You don't belong in our class, so you can't marry somebody from our class. I prefer the people involved to decide for themselves, not society. So it's very sad. Even the Meghan Markle thing too. I find it sad that she couldn't just be she couldn't just be allowed to marry because she wanted to marry. Whatever her reasons were, that's her business. It's none of our business, So back to the movie. I like the fact that they depicted stuff that is realistic, or not realistic, that is relevant to our time today. The stuff that's going to continue for as long as human beings exist, we're always going to be forming cliques and deciding who belongs where. That's just the way we're wired. I was happy for her, she was able to sacrifice for her daughter, but that final scene really broke my heart, because I was hoping that she would be acknowledged at some point. Yeah, it's realistic in the sense that it's a realistic depiction of society, but sometimes you just hope that the so-called good guys, like the dad and his new wife and their lovely children and the lovely guy he's supposed to get married to, you would think that they would at least make an exception and say, okay, the mom can attend the wedding or whatever. It was just sad to me to see, but it was a really good movie. I really enjoyed the movie. one last now to talk about is I noticed lots of things have changed. Back in the day, it seems when people kiss, they kiss in a way that covers the kiss. I don't know if anybody noticed that. When a guy wants to kiss a girl in the movie, he kind of shields their mouths. But I noticed that even when she was kissing her daughter, the same thing happened. I don't know. So it just seems that the standards were much stricter then. I don't know whether they saw kissing as overtly sexualized, and the fact that the actors are not real mother and daughter. I don't know. It just looks. It seemed strange initially when I used to watch the movies and they kissed in that funny way, but now it made sense. Oh, it's some kind of censorship. They're hiding the kiss. But I just wanted to mention that. Thanks for letting me speak.
Well, there's a way that they can do that censorship and still show a lot of emotion, and I didn't see any of that. I think someone else pointed it out. It was not a great love affair.
Not really a lot of hot stuff going on.
Not a lot of hot stuff, which is what you want from Barbara Stanwyck, but you're
That's
not
right.
getting it, right? There was no Great Balls of Fire type of
No.
thing there, so.
But thank you, Wally. That was really good.
Yeah, that was good. Okay, so we've got Jim, then Jan, then Bill.
I'd like to follow up on some of the things that Darnice said that about the change in Stella or lack thereof. And one of the things I noted, I wanted to go back. I watched the movie twice. The first time I was sort of like Bill Bates, I guess it's okay. Second time, I really got into it. And watching it the second time, I realized early on that when Stephen is trying to correct Darnice for some things, and she said, "Oh, and she had some junky jewelry that he didn't like, and she said, well, you can make me change the way I talk and the way I walk, but you can't make me change my dress. I'm the one who knows how to dress," and that was what ultimately was her downfall. So.
Yeah.
Her style.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay, so we've got.
I don't think she stood a chance to start with.
You don't think she what?
Dress, if it wasn't her dress, it would have been her accent. It would have been her. She never stood a chance. I don't think she had any. Yeah.
Never had a chance. You're right.
Never
You're right. Even if she had dressed well or dressed refined, there was still something, like Sue was saying, it's just something about her in the way that she probably would never been accepted in that class. Even he had to like build himself back up with a job to come back into the fold. But yeah, there might have been some issues there. Okay, so we've got Jan, then Bill.
Hi, everybody. Happy New Year.
Jan. Happy New Year.
I like this movie. Like the two Sues said, I think. I know women like this. I know women who would devote their life to their child, who are devoting their life to their child. So I got all that. It came from an era that some of you know I love movies from this era. My complaint with the movie, though, is the woman in the beginning who saw the newspaper article and kind of schemed how she was going to get to meet this man. Who, remember when she came to that office, dressed very feminine, ladylike, also spoke a lot different than the way she was speaking at the end. Mm-hmm. When she went to the I guess it was like a country club, all dressed up in the beginning, right after having the baby. I mean, it was flashy, but the women there were dressed flashy. That was not the woman at the end. So I guess my point is the woman who was clever enough to scheme to hook this guy, and who also raised a very demure, sophisticated young lady, I didn't buy that she would be the somewhat, bawdy, vulgar woman at the end. And that's a complaint with the script, not Barbara Stanwyck. It was a little unbuyable to me. I don't think that daughter would have turned out as lovely as she was with a woman who was so, underclass or wasn't putting everything into her. I don't know, just to complain as I watched it at the end, I thought, I'm not buying this. She was too clever. I'm not saying she would have been able to talk, upper class literature and carry on big conversations with some of these people, but she would have acted different, and my complaint with it. But other than that, good movie.
All right, Jan, I thank you for that. I think I may have an answer for you. I think we're talking about generally the same point in the picture. And you have to remember that Stephen is gone, Laurel is gone. So who's she left with? Edmund. That's the only person she's interacting with, and we all know about it. That's my answer for that. I may be wrong.
Yeah.
If I could just quickly interject, how did she get that daughter to that point? That wasn't. Now I know she had a good father, but he wasn't around much. Mm-hmm. So that girl spoke well, and was getting educated, and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, I think Dee put that in the thing. She went away to boarding school. Mm-hmm. And I almost felt like they set it up in the very beginning when they showed that scene where she was where Laurel wiped the table with her bib, and she was like, "Oh, she takes just after her father." So I wonder if they were trying to do the nature versus nurture argument with that. That was my interpretation. But yeah, it's true. We don't know if it was all her, but it definitely didn't. The other part of her that they showed, the floozy part, which I love that word, Susan, didn't show into Laurel's behavior. So she didn't pick that up. So she must have gotten some reading somehow. Yeah. Okay, Bill Snyder.
So just a quick aside before I make my real point, when Andy mentioned Zeppo Marx early on,
she dropped it.
When Barbara, near the end of the movie, she had her hair in all these tight little curls and stuff, and I remember thinking that reminds me of Harpo. And
I thought the same thing.
But what I really wanted to say was, I've too had a little trouble with believability in certain spots, because she came home from the hospital after having this baby, and if she's such a devoted mother, why was the first thing she wanted to do is go out and go dancing? It just struck me that didn't really make sense. Okay, then maybe later she became the devoted mother, because she sure wasn't when she first came home with the baby. And then if she was, I still, she did all this great stuff for her. She was making all these dresses and things. The daughter always looked great. So how come she was making dresses for both of them? How come the daughter's dresses were always nice and respectable and whatever, and hers were the wild kind of crazy thing? And then at the end, okay, she gave up her daughter so she'd have the better life and stuff, and she'd looked through the window and stuff. But you're telling me she never, ever reached out to talk to her again the rest of her life? If she was so devoted to her, how could she not reach out to her? Just some of that I didn't get.
I don't know, but you do have to remember at the very end of the film, Stella is smiling. So there's hope for that reconciliation.
I kept wanting the daughter to look out the window and catch her mom.
I did too.
I think everybody wanted to have
You wanted to take her head, just go.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, we got a lot of hands up. Let's see.
Bill was the one I saw first, and then Wale. Bill B.
I think I saw Bruce in there also.
Oh, Bruce here. I'm sorry. Yes.
I saw a flurry of hands. All right, so who's next? Bill?
Then we got Bill B, Wale, Bruce. Sorry, I'll do it that way because that's how I called it.
Yeah, I think Jan and Bill both sort of put their finger on some of the problems I had with the film. And in hearing everybody talk about it, I do feel like there was more of a problem with the script than anything in terms of, I think it's a very good observation about how together she was when she was going after Steve in the courtship, and how she just kind of fell apart later. And the fact that, again, as Bill pointed out, she wanted to go dancing. It was all about her. And then somehow, years later, she magically gets to this place where she's really devoted to her daughter. And I felt like the script didn't really convey that. Another thing, I have a slight disagreement, Darnice, in that when you were talking about how it was all on Steve in terms of not letting her be what she wanted to be. I agree. Steve had his problems. Like Steve was sort of your classic nice guy who is basically a stiff, right? But I remember early on during the courtship with Steve, she did this whole soliloquy about, oh, Steve, I want to be just like you. I want to know your world. I want to be in your world. I want to learn things. And that was part of the jolt for me when we went right after the marriage and right after she had the baby. And it's suddenly, oh, this man means nothing to me. All I want to do is have fun. You're such a stiff. And it was jolting for me. Did anybody else see that?
I could see your point. I wasn't really putting it all on him as much as I was saying that he acted as if he didn't have a hand in it. But after what you said, it reminds me of what Andy said earlier about her manipulating the situation. So all of that, I want to be in your world type of thing could have also been part of the game just to get in the door. So I agree. Okay, so since Wale talked already and Bruce hasn't, I'm going to go to Bruce first, if you don't mind, Wale, and then go back to you.
Got a promotion. I have so many thoughts based on the movie and based on what people have said this evening, and I did not jot them down, and I am forgetful, so I'll try to hit some of them quickly. I think one thing we see is that you can take the girl out of the country or out of her whatever situation, but you can't take the country out of the girl. So I think, Bill, I think that scene you brought up was very important, that she's saying, I want to be like you, I want to be like you, because and remember, Stephen's response is, no, don't be like me, be yourself. And what was mentioned earlier, Stella didn't want to be herself. Not only did she want to marry up, if you will, she wanted to be of that world. And I think she realized that she couldn't. No matter how hard she wanted to, she tried. I didn't get the impression that she was putting on airs, but she was trying to marry those two worlds together, the being herself with the expression through her clothing, but being of that world by staying at the country club, what have you. But I think it was a very big struggle within her. At one point, she realized that she couldn't change who she was, but she could affect, or not change, but affect who her daughter was going to be. And that's when she started making that large focus. She had a line, she was talking to Ed one of the time. Ed was a cringy. Whenever Ed came into the scene, I was cringing, not just because of some of his ookiness, for lack of a better term, but just he just sort of created some degree of chaos whenever he was involved in something. But nonetheless, she said to him at one point that she wasn't into that anymore. She wasn't drinking. She wasn't going out and partying because since Laurel, and I think Lolly is just the cutest nickname for Laurel. I wish I knew somebody named Laurel so I could start calling her Lolly. But when she said once Lolly came along, I don't want to do that anymore. It's about her. And I think that was the big switch. And that's when we started to see she became more of that, more of who she was. She let that flag fly a little more. And I think that's when we started to see that shift of all about Laurel. So at the end, I think she needed to be happy. She needed to be with someone, and she was married at the end. So I think she did in fact marry most likely Ed, but she didn't want to go in. She didn't want to see the wedding. She didn't want to interact with Laurel because to do so would, but she realized that Laurel's best chance was not with her because she can't change who she is. And if she stays around Laurel, Laurel can't be who she wants her to be. So she'll watch through the window, but not tap on the glass, not try to get her attention, not do anything that's going to pull Laurel back into who Stella is. And then she walks away and she smiles, not because she's going to have a relationship with Lolly in the future. She smiles because she finally succeeded. She has gotten Laurel where she wants Laurel to be, and she's happy with that. Gives her peace. My thoughts.
Thanks, Bruce. Okay,
Excellent. Excellent.
Ballet, then
Good
Jackie,
viewpoint.
then Bill.
Yeah, at the beginning, I didn't notice, like I said before, I didn't notice her accent or behavior was anything out of the, societal norm. I didn't even notice that she and Stephen were different until after they came home with the baby. So yeah, the coming home from the hospital scene was a little bit unrealistic, yes. But I mean, generally speaking, all I saw was somebody who wanted to have fun, wanted to live her life. People were judging her because she didn't sound like they did. She didn't want to do the things they wanted to do. And she didn't want to, and she wanted to associate with people that they felt were not worthy. So I watched it without looking down on her behavior or person. She's who she is, and there's nothing wrong with who she is. What's wrong is that she doesn't fit into a particular society's norms. Now, raising a child, the child doesn't stay 24 hours with her. The child goes to school. The child interacts with everybody else. I have kids. My kids sound different from me, even though they live in my house, because they go to school. They interact with people who sound like everybody else. So they sound like everybody else. So I don't expect her kid to necessarily behave exactly the same way she's behaving. And her behavior is not necessarily, okay, I want my kid to want exactly what I want. No, she wants her kid to be happy. She wants her kid to live her life. So it's very possible for her to be the way she is and for her kid to be completely different from her. At the end, we are talking about her like reconciling with her child and walking in and maybe not wanting her child to become like her. But what I'm still helping on is the fact that society wasn't going to accept her. That was the real issue. It didn't matter what she wanted It didn't matter what she wanted her child to be or what the relationship between her and the child would be. Society did not accept her, and that was it. She was either society accepts her or her child loses the opportunities that will come her way. and she didn't want her child to lose the opportunity. So she's out of it. She has no choice really. If her child is going to marry into the family that she's marrying into and live the life that she's living. So that's I felt the people in the movie were a little too harsh on her, and I feel like even we watching the movie are a little bit too harsh on her because we're judging her behavior based on what we think is the norm, and the norm is everybody else in the movie. There's a whole universe that the movie doesn't show where her behavior is the norm, and other people are, abnormal.
Yeah. Some great stuff. Really, really great. Let's see, who else? I see we have Bill.
Jackie and then Bill Sikora.
Jackie, okay.
Just really quickly, I wanted to add, since Andy doesn't have anyone in the audience from 1937, I did hear interviews of women, and I don't remember what the pretext was, but they were saying why they married the way they did, and in several of the cases, it was the only way to get out of the house, to get out of your parents' rules, to get from under their thumb, to go out and have some fun. Or whatever, to do whatever it is they wanted. They had a better chance marrying anybody or somebody better if they could, just to be able to have a one-on-one negotiation instead of a 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, kind of negotiation. So in several of those cases, they married, and some of those choices were good marriages for them, and some of them were not. But the reason, the compelling driver, was the same for several of those folks. It was the rules at the time. You were in your parents' house, and then you were in your husband's house, and get a husband because I can't be here.
Thank you, Jackie. That was great.
Yeah.
Almost as good as having someone from 1937 here. But no, that is very good, because that was a different time, and to hear that from women who lived through that, yeah, that's very valuable.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Bill?
So watching this movie, you watch the first 15 minutes and you say, wow, look at all the good things that have happened. This is, the happy movie has already happened, the happy ending. Everything, seemed perfect until the poison in this movie, I think, is Ed. So she has the baby, they go to the party, she meets this guy. Every time she interacts with him in the movie, changes her life. So she interacts with him there, and she wants to be a party animal and not be as conservative as her husband. She meets with him and in the train, and the teacher is there, and it really destroys the image of her and sets up the saddest scene that I think I've ever seen in a movie, where the mother and daughter had this party arranged, and it seems like it's going to be great, and it turns out to be just terrible. And it's because of that interaction in the train that the teacher had seen and had poisoned that relationship. When there's a possibility that maybe reconciliation at Christmas time, and who pops out of the closet and really kind of destroys that, is Ed again, and brings out that, he's like the antithesis, or the thing that makes her pulled towards her darker side. And it happens again and again. It's just, if ever there was a brilliant villain who didn't seem so brilliant, it was him. And, it destroyed things. He was the evil one.
I was actually hoping a character from a Quentin Tarantino movie might slide into the picture for like 30 seconds, take care of Ed, and then go back. I I didn't like it, not a bit. But Alan Hale was excellent in the role. Well, a couple of things, and we can certainly continue. But before we continue, I wanted to mention, and I may have mentioned this book before. This is a Mammoth biography of Barbara Stanwyck by Victoria Wilson, and it's 1,000 pages long, and it stops at 1940.
Jesus.
So there's so much in here, but there was, and I certainly haven't read all of this, but there was a passage where Wilson says of this film, she says, the punishment of trying to change class is that in the end, one doesn't belong anywhere. And I think we see some of that in the film where, you know, she doesn't really belong. She's trying to get her daughter into this world, but she really doesn't fit into either world. And the last thing I was going to say is that I think Stanwyck understood this role so well is because that was her life. I mean, she lost her mom at age 4. The family didn't have a lot of money. She was from Brooklyn, and God bless her, you can hear the Brooklyn accent in every single movie Barbara Stanwyck is in. But Stanwyck really did have to reinvent herself, and she did it so well. She really, really understood this role inside and out. And you know, I totally believe she was worthy of not only the nomination for this film, but she should have won. But again, this really goes very, very deep into Stanwyck's background. So it's not a surprise that she nailed this. Okay, we're getting pretty close to time, but if anybody else still has any comments, we certainly want to get those in.
I see Dee has her. Yeah, Dee has her hand up.
All right, super.
Hi, I wondered what anyone else thought about the time in the when she's at the fancy hotel and all dolled up, and she gives the waiter a tip, and she certainly goes about it wrong, stuffing it into his jacket. But I kind of interpreted it as a sign of how generous she was being, and that she was being generous and giving him the money. And I just wondered whether that's how other people interpreted it, or whether you interpreted it that she was kind of showing off with the money.
A good question. What do you guys think?
Good question. Go ahead, Jan. And then Bruce.
Hang on. I interpreted she thought that's what she was supposed to do. She didn't know there's a discreet way of, you know, passing a tip. I still go back and I take all of your comments with a lot of respect. I still think though that she was clever enough. She would have schemed a little bit better and would have come around quickly. There was a remake. Is anybody aware of this in the late 80s? I actually saw it a couple months ago. So Stella was played by Bette Midler.
Oh my.
And Ed was John Goodman. Now, this Stella was, you know, the same from the beginning to the end and had no pretenses that she was going anywhere. It almost was, it wasn't a great movie, so don't bother seeing it. But so it's good to see Bette Midler in anything. But, you know, she was the same character from the beginning to the end. Where Stella, I get this, our Stella, Barbara's Stella, I felt could have been different, I guess is how I'll leave that. But I just wanted to mention the remake. I think it was around the late 80s.
Great, thank you. So we'll go to Bruce and then we'll go back to Debbie.
Just very quickly, that entire scene with when she was at the country club and she was just oververputzt and she was just cashed big tip and it really, really reminded me of Rodney Dangerfield in Caddyshack. Just ostentatious with money, trying so hard to be without the well, let's say brash, but different motive, a different center of who they are. But I just really saw that. I'm like, oh, it's like almost watching a female Rodney Dangerfield. But yeah,
I love that. I love that. Can you see him and Stella Dallas getting together? I mean, wouldn't that be great?
unfortunately, I probably could.
Is he not Ed with the class? Like,
That's right.
But
That's
but
right.
even not to belabor Caddyshack, but even in Caddyshack, he had money like everyone else, but he was not of that class. He got his money through like a dry cleaning business or something that was not old money. It was that classism is still there. So
yeah,
I don't know how hard you can socially break out of it. You can break out of it by marrying or what have you, but who you are is who you are, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's great. And Ted Knight says in that movie at one point, some people just don't belong. And that applies in this as well. Yeah, I'm glad you brought Cat. Anytime you can bring Caddyshack into the conversation, I'm okay with that.
It's a Cinderella story. We go to Debbie now.
Well, nobody has brought this up, so I'll just throw it out for what it's worth. I really liked Barbara Stanwyck in this part. I thought she made the movie. And also, I just kept seeing parallels and similarities with Mildred Pierce, to the point where I wrote, this feels like a weird feel-good version of Mildred Pierce, because she was so willing to do anything to get her daughter the life that she thought and the resources that she thought she should have, so that she could actually move up in the world past where Stella was. And she would do anything, even alienate her there at the end. I mean, I predicted that she was going to do that she was going to be as obnoxious as possible to get her out of the house, so she could have those opportunities. And I thought the ending was just right. And, well, I just kept seeing those parallels with Mildred Pierce, except, of course, that Lolly was nice and Vita is not nice. And there's a whole different dynamic going on there. But they're both about women who want to get up in the world and will do so for the sake of the daughter. That's
excellent.
Just something that I thought.
Very good.
That's a great point.
All right. Is there anybody else?
So I have two questions. Oh, Jackie.
We got Jackie.
Sue, but I have two questions. One, because Ethan said that too. Love the name drop of Zeppo Marx. How long was he her agent?
He was her agent for not super long term, but for several years. And Zeppo, of course, left performing on camera to become an agent publicist, which he did fairly successfully for quite a while.
Awesome. Okay. And then the other question is, I wasn't sure if this was a ploy or if this was actually true, but do you think that Stella was ill at the country club? Or do you think that she was just staying in the room and allowing Laurel to become part of that world? I never quite figured that out. I wanted to know. I wanted to go back and watch, but it didn't seem like, she was just leafing through magazines and doing anything, but I didn't actually see what kind of illness she had.
That's a good question.
And I wondered if that was a ploy.
What do people think?
Yeah, what does anybody think about that? Debbie says she was confused. I think, I don't know. Yeah. Do you see a hand up, Wale?
Yeah. Throughout the movie, I got the impression that everyone was trying to hide her. Like she didn't belong, so she got used to being hidden from view. Spends a lot of time at home, spends a lot of time just not mixing with those crowds. And I think after a while, it got the better of her. So like she wanted to go out. And I think her garish dressing is kind of like the equivalent of somebody who normally would dress conservatively in their social circles, now trying to figure out what to wear to impress people. And they go and buy like some really garish gold watch, garish sneakers and gold chain or something, just to show that they're that they belong to that class, and messing it up and not realizing what to do. I still agree that it's a little bit unrealistic in the sense that you should have been watching people all these years and knowing what to do. But for the sake of a movie as short as it is, I think it's just what it is. But I got the impression that she was hiding away.
Yeah,
And she eventually.
I was wanting that too.
Yeah.
Jackie, and then I thought Art. Did you have your hand up too? Or change your mind? Okay, so Jackie, then Art.
Just real quick, I put a link in, and I'm not sure I did it right because that's the first time I added a link. But if all of you appreciate good directors, they have a whole slew of famous directors directing like NFL player lineups. It's perfect for a quick laugh. It's like a 4-minute laugh of all the hallmarks of certain directors that we know and love. I love the Wes Anderson one, but there's plenty there.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. Did everybody see that in the chat?
Yeah, I can put it in again.
Okay. I'm gonna save that.
I'm not sure I did it right, so
you did it right.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, because it went right to it. So you're good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, yeah, very interesting. Okay, Art.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing. I know his name came up a couple of times during this cast, and Zeppo and Gummo Marx had started a theatrical agency in Hollywood, and they obviously they managed their brothers, but they also were the ones behind that big contract that Kay Francis signed, making her the highest paid actor in Warner Brothers that Jack Warner tried to force her to breach. So they were very renowned as agents back then.
Yeah. Very interesting stuff. Okay, who do we have? Do we have one more?
I think that was it.
Okay. Well, I am going to go ahead with my recommendations, and some of you have already been reading my notes, Jan, because I was going to talk about the fact that Stella Dallas was remade in 1990 as Stella with Bette Midler. And I'm glad you saw the film, Jan, because I haven't seen it. It's not available on Kanopy or at the library, but I know it probably isn't great, but I'd still like to see that. I mean, Bette Midler as Stella, who wouldn't want to see that? So for my next recommendation is another look at a mother-daughter relationship, and one of my favorites, and that's Terms of Endearment from 1983, with an all-star cast, including Shirley MacLaine, Jack Nicholson, Deborah Winger, Jeff Daniels, John Lithgow, and Danny DeVito. Now, this film won 5 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Actress for Shirley MacLaine and Best Supporting Actor for Jack Nicholson. That was not on Kanopy, but it is available on DVD from the library. And Debbie has obviously been looking at my notes because I had Mildred Pierce from 1945 with Joan Crawford in the title role, trying to give her daughter the best life possible. But maybe this daughter didn't really appreciate mom's sacrifices. And also a little bit of trivia, Stanwick was considered for that role that Crawford won an Oscar for. It's also on DVD from the library and not on Kanopy. And then I'm closing my other two recommendations with 2 other early Barbara Stanwyck pre-code movies that are available on DVD from the library, but unfortunately not on Kanopy. Babyface from 1933, with Barbara Stanwyck as a woman literally sleeping her way to the top of a New York corporate office. And Ladies They Talk About, also from 1933, with Barbara and Art's really a big fan of those too. Barbara is a member of a gang of bank robbers, if you can imagine that. Both of those are terrific movies. All right, I know I'm risking opening up the floodgates here, but what are your recommendations? Go.
Art?
Well, on the same line, as far as, I don't know if it's on Kanopy or not, but another good movie about mother-daughter relationship that I would recommend is Postcards from the Edge, with Shirley MacLaine and Meryl Streep. That's a good one.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Great Art.
That's a great one. Yeah, thank you. Okay, see Jan?
I would think Imitation of Life, both versions.
Both versions.
Both versions.
Yeah, I'm going to say mid-30s, late mid-50s, something like that.
Yep.
Both of them.
That's Lana Turner for the 50s one, right? Is it
Right.
Ron
Yeah,
Turner?
yeah, and
okay.
Claudette Colbert for the original.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, those are both good.
Anyone else?
Come on, mother-daughter movies, you got to have some.
Ethan? Oh,
Or Stanwick, or
I didn't
That
realize I didn't realize it was a requirement for the mother-daughter relationship.
no,
but
not
I
at
can-
all.
it's not a requirement.
No, if you have a recommendation, it's fine. That's not mother and daughter because there's so many of those out there.
So
But Susan, go ahead. Oh, I'm
Mommy
sorry.
Dearest isn't going to make the list.
It can.
It can. Doing everything you can for your children.
Yeah.
Sure.
What kind of coat hangers are we talking here? You know,
Never eating liver again. You know, Star is Born. That's a great one.
They couldn't be dysfunctional.
Yeah, yeah. A Gypsy, also. John.
They aren't specifically mother-daughter, but two great movies, I think, dealing with intergenerational relations is Otsu's Tokyo Story and Leo McCarey's Make Way for Tomorrow with Morgan and Bondi. I mean, you're going to need a box of handkerchiefs or tissues with you to get through that movie. But they deal with that issue, I think, both of them in different ways, but very effectively.
John, those are both fantastic. I thought Make Way for Tomorrow was on Kanopy, but maybe not. That you're right. You're going to need to buy the Kleenex Factory out for that one. But it's so good. Great.
So we've got Susan and then Jeff.
Speaking of Beulah Bondi, I was just thinking, and Barbara Stanwyck, Remember the Night. It's mostly considered a Christmas movie, but there's a scene where Fred McMurray takes Barbara Stanwyck's character to visit her mother. That is a whole different perspective on a mother-daughter relationship. We'll leave it that way. It's a really good movie, though, very moving, and Beulah Bondi played Fred McMurray's mother or aunt or something in the movie.
That's great. I love Beulah Bondi.
Great, thank you. I saw one other hand. I'm sorry. It was Jeff. Sorry, I didn't write it down.
Yeah, just to jump back on our own little thing here. I think back to Lady Bird. Also a really brilliant mother-daughter relationship there. My other one is kind of not in that vein, but it's very much about a woman who kind of has her own idea of how she wants her life to go forward. And that's Joe Mankiewicz's The Ghost of Mrs. Muir from, I believe, 1947, with Jean Tierney as Mrs. Muir. George Sanders is also in that. And one of the great scores ever by Bernard Herrmann in that one. So if nobody's seen that one, you should look that up.
That's great, Jeff.
I love the television series.
I know too. Yeah.
It was awesome. I think I saw another hand. Okay. No? Okay. That's awesome.
All right. Wow. All right. I've kept you guys late, and this has been a fantastic discussion. We just they just keep getting better. You guys are always having so many wonderful comments and insights into these films. So keep it going. Yeah, just keep this thing going. So again, I will see you on February the 4th for another round. You may bring drinks to this discussion. Darnice and I are not able to do so. I hope you enjoy the movie. It's in Danish, in English subtitles, but I think we'll have a lot to talk about. Has anybody already seen Another Round?
No.
Okay, Ethan's seen it. All right, and I've seen it. It's going to be new to everybody else. All right.
That's
great.
nice.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you all again so much, and everybody take care. Be safe. Watch some great movies, and I will see you soon. Thanks again for joining us.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
Margaret, great to see you. Good to see you.
See
All right,
everybody
take care. All right.
Hi, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night.